So we've all been there. The service is about to start and almost nobody is in attendance. But did you know that it does not have to be that way? In fact, in this episode of Practical Church Planting, we're going to give you 6 tips to help you get your people to church on time.
Welcome back to Practical Church Planting, where in 15 minutes or less, we'll give you practical tips, advice, and encouragement to help you plant and grow healthy churches. My name is Brian Androsian. Joining me here is Dylan Dotson. And today we're talking about 6 ways to help people show up on time.
So we all know that starting a service and having not very many people there is kind of a bummer.
That is true.
What you may not know is that there are things that you and I can do to help encourage people showing up on time and not being super late.
Yeah.
And so today we're going to share with you 6 of those things. So number 1, this is probably maybe the biggest thing, and it's hard. It's really hard to do the smaller or the newer you are.
Yeah.
And that's simply this: is start on time. Every single week, start on time, even when you're small, even if you feel like there's not very many people there, or you feel awkward, or because you know maybe you're meeting in your house and whatever, and you know people are going to show up soon. It can be very easy to wait for them, but the problem is people are kind of creatures of habit. Like they know, people come to know, oh, they don't actually start on time anyway.
Yep.
So there's no point in me getting there on time and having to wait. You've got to create this culture and this expectation of we are starting so that people know you're actually starting.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about this briefly in the last episode, but I think you need to respect people's time. People are giving you time out of their week and they're taking their family there. I think as a family, one of the worst things is that get everyone there on time and then sit down and realize, oh, I could have taken an extra 5 minutes.
Or knowing that you could take an extra 5 minutes, so there's no point being there. Like,
well,
for example,
that's what would turn out, yeah.
We all have those friends, right, that we know are never on time anywhere. And so whenever we have to get together with them or meet with them, we already know they're going to be late, so it makes you more likely to be late. And I'm someone that cannot stand being late to anything. I just can't do it. But if I'm getting up with someone who I know I'm going to be late, like it'll make me not care as much because I know I'm just going to be sitting there. And that's the expectation that we create in people is if they know it's not going to start on time, why show up on time? And then you just get later and later and later, and then it's no good.
Yeah, I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but I've been to churches before where as a newcomer, you show up on time. If you're new, you always show up on time. And when you're sitting there when the church is supposed to be starting and nothing's happening.
Right.
And you kind of hear those murmurs like, is it supposed to be 9:30 or is it 9 o'clock? And nothing's happening. But to me, it just comes across as either they're not prepared or they're unprofessional or they just don't care about my time.
Right. And that's a great point. Again, if you don't start on time, people will learn, and so they'll always come late. And most people that are coming for the first time will not be late, especially if they're new to this whole church thing. It's been a while. They don't know what to expect. They're going to come early or come on time. To them, it shows that, well, why should I be here either? And it gives them a bad taste in their mouth. So number 1, super important, even if it's small, even if it feels awkward, start on time.
That's right.
So that people know that you start on time. Number 2, you want to make the beginning of your service worth going to, or at least not super boring or worth missing. So, for example, a lot of churches, or maybe if you're a newer church or you're just starting up, you might start with announcements, for example. And not only will you have way too many announcements, we have a previous episode, I'm not sure which number, which we talk about how to do announcements or what we call next steps better.
Right.
But the kind of the stereotypical ideas are here's 5 or 10 things that are coming up and it takes 5 minutes to explain. And the person who's even giving the announcements is about to fall asleep and nobody's paying attention.
Yep.
Like there's no reason for me to come on time if you're not going to start on time. And when you start, like you start the service by saying, hey, we're so glad you're here. There's a few more people coming in, so we'll wait a few more minutes. Or here's some things coming up, and there's no energy, and nobody cares.
Yep. We go back and listen to our announcements episode, but we have rules that we implement here at New City of what makes the cut for an announcement and what doesn't. And basically, it needs to apply to the majority of the church. So if your announcements you're giving 10 announcements, they're boring, and plus the new person sitting there is listening and thinking, none of these even apply to me.
Right.
They're going to start tuning it out, and then they're going to stop showing up on time because announcements are inherently boring. Even if you're the greatest in the world, they're inherently boring. Every church does them. And so if that's the way you always start, people are going to stop coming on time.
So you might be saying, Dylan, Brian, what do you do instead? Here's what we would recommend.
I'm so glad you asked.
You can start with a song, on time worship song, even though people are still coming in. Like that'll show, hey, we're actually we're singing, we're doing something. At New City, we often start with a song, Or if we start with next steps, which we call announcements, is that we don't just do the normal next announcements.
Right.
Normally, the person who starts the service that week has to be one of our better next step people, has to be personable, has to share something that's funny or something that's interesting, not cheesy, but just a way to be like, hey, we're starting, like, I'm not just going to bore you, a way to connect people for the first 30 seconds to reel them in. Or, and we've done this in the past too, like we've actually started with a game.
Yeah.
And people are like, a game in service? And it's like, who says you can't play a game?
Blasphemy.
Right. Nobody says that. So like something that's coming up, like not this past year, but the year before, for the Super Bowl, we did this like football flag thing. I don't know. We've done
like
stuff.
paper football.
On July 4th, last year, what did we do? Like eating disgusting foods, but they were July 4th colored or something. Not that you have to do that every week, but like just do something that's like, oh, we're actually doing something and we're not just sitting around. So number 2, make the beginning of your service worth going to. Here's number 3, which after starting on time is probably the most helpful thing you could do. And that is putting a countdown timer on your screens. So whether you just have one screen in the auditorium or if you have a screen in the lobby or whatever, put something on your screen so people know we're starting, so that when they're there, if they're getting coffee, if they're talking, they know when they need to make their way in, and they just know what's going on. And I was just going to say, just with that, well, you say what you're going to say. I want to say how we do it here at New City.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to say, once people get here, even if they gotten here on time, by the time when they walk in the doors, they forget what time it is.
Right.
Most of the time they're not looking at the clock, seeing what time do I need to go in there. So putting a countdown timer. Putting a countdown timer on, especially, do it no matter what, but it especially works well if you have screens in your lobbies. But it just helps people realize, oh, it's time to go in.
Right. So again, whether just getting people here on time is one thing, but even if they're here, it's like, hey, we're starting, come on in. So here's how we do it in New City. So for our countdown timer, we do 5 minutes.
Yep.
We put it on our screens. We have screens in the auditorium and a screen in our lobby. And it's 5 minutes. Now we do pre-post slides like many of you probably do. It's like a 7-second rotation. There's like 5 or 7 or 10. I don't know. Things that are coming at a New City.
Right.
And it's important for for people to still see them, especially because most people show up within 5 minutes of when the service starts. So at the bottom left of our screens, a 5-minute countdown starts while those pre-post screens are going, so they can still see them. But then when there's 2 minutes left, we actually have a 2-minute video that we've created where the 2 minutes takes up pretty much the entire screen. And behind the 2-minute countdown are videos and pictures that are scrolling through of things that have happened at New City Church, events, baptisms, stuff like that.
Right. So
that people know we're actually getting started. And not only do we have a video that takes over from the pre-post slides at 2 minutes, but there's also music with it. Yeah. And that music is different than what our pre-post music is. It's just normally worship songs. So people know, they can see we're starting soon, but there's also that audio reminder that we're starting.
Yeah, it works out real well because most people aren't just watching the screen. So if they hear the music change, then they know something's different. It's time to go.
It's like we said, it's like Pavlov's dog.
Pavlov.
Pavlov's dog experiment where, they hear it, they're trained, we're going to get started.
Yep.
But again, it's just a great way for people to know that you're starting on time, to get situated, to come on in, to train people. Let's do this.
And then they start salivating.
And then that could happen, but you might have other problems. So again, the countdown timer on screens are a big and a helpful way to show people we're getting ready to go. Just make sure you actually start your service when your timer ends. I've been to churches where that wasn't the case, and you're just sitting there like, what
happens next?
So make sure you start on time. So that is number 3. Here's number 4. And again, this is really important, especially if you're at a smaller church, is to not guilt people for being late or point out that people are late.
Yeah.
So don't, like, after the fact be like, well, where were you? I can't believe you showed up late, instead of just being happy and celebrating the fact that they came at all. But even more than that, starting the service and be like, well, we still have a few people coming in, and so I guess we'll wait a few more minutes. Like don't do that. Go ahead and start.
Yeah, I think what that does is, and I've heard that a lot more, not so much guilting people, but saying like, we'll get started as people are coming in, or, things will get started here in a minute once more people show.
Right.
And what it does is it's kind of, what's the way to put it? It kind of downgrades or whatever the people that actually did show up on time.
Right.
So basically what you're saying is the people that are here that did go out of the way to show up on time, you don't matter as much, sort of is the way it comes across. You don't matter as much as the people that are going to be coming.
Right. And we all say that everybody matters.
Right.
But if you're sitting there, you feel like, well, I must not be that important for them to start, even though I did the work of coming.
Yeah, it's kind of like, oh, well, I guess since you're here, we might as well. But the better people are coming.
Right. And here's the thing. Everybody knows that people come late.
Yeah.
And so pointing out the lateness also makes it kind of awkward and kind of like I mean, people know, it's just, instead of just owning the fact, hey, we're going to get started, like, let's just do this thing. It makes people feel weird. It makes people that are there on time, who may not have really noticed that it's not as full as it normally gets in a few minutes. Now they're thinking about the fact that a bunch of people are late, and they're like, why am I here? So just don't point it out. I know you may be feeling it. Most people probably are not paying attention, and it just makes it kind of awkward for everybody.
Yeah, totally.
So don't guilt people or point out late lists. Here's number 5. It's really important, especially to be thinking through if you haven't, but you want to make sure your kids' check-in process is efficient and seamless as possible. Because again, most people with kids are probably only getting there within a few minutes before when the service starts. And so if they're back there, if there's a line, there's a crying baby, it's going to take them a while to get through that process. And they're also going to be late for the service, even though they were on time, because the kids' check-in process takes a while.
Yeah, there's many reasons to make sure your kids' check-in process is good. But, you know, if you have something like a single parent show up when their kids are crying or having a tough morning, then also putting on this cumbersome check-in process that just they're trying to get through while dealing with their kids just puts a sour taste in their mouth from the get-go before they even walk into service.
And not only that is that if people are in that situation, then it's training them, well, I'm going to show up 5 minutes after the service starts, so there's not a line where I'll have to wait.
Right.
Which makes people already come even later, and plus they still have to check in their kids.
Yeah.
And so I don't know what that process looks like for you, but I would just say make sure it is as tight and as seamless as possible, so that people can get in on time and people don't have to deal with the hassle of trying to check in and kids and all that stuff, making it worse and making them might feel, especially if they're new, they might feel embarrassed by the fact their kids acting up when we know that's just normal. But if they're like, I don't know how you're supposed to act at church, they could feel bad.
True.
So you want to make sure that process is quick and easy so that people will show up and be able to get into the service on time.
Right.
So that's number 5, your kids' check-in area. And number 6, the last one, is changing up your order of service might help people show up on time.
Yeah.
So what that means is maybe not always, like we said before, starting with announcements, or not always starting with a song, and not always making it like, okay, I know what they're going to do and I don't care about this, or I don't like this, so I'm going to show up late.
Yeah, this is, kind of goes back to the thing of we want everyone to just love church the way it is and show up just to worship God. And who cares what the details are like? But that's not true. We are people. And so if there's a point in the service that's always kind of boring, whether it's announcements or something like that, or the first song always has low energy, something along those lines, then you're going to start training people that you don't need to be there for this part that isn't really that enjoyable. So change it up. Make them so they don't know what's coming up next.
And you might be wondering, well, Brian and Dylan, what do you guys do to change it up?
What a great question.
So, well, let's give you a great answer. Well, I don't know if it's going to be that great. So we do like one of 3 things most of the time. Most of the time we start with a song, not next steps. Sometimes we'll start with next steps, but again, we make sure they're even more engaging than normal next steps. Or sometimes we even start with a game. Yeah. But you're like, can you play a game in the church? Why can't you have fun? You can. Now, we don't do this every week, but we've done like not this year, but the year before for the Super Bowl, we did like this paper football thing. Yeah. Last July 4th, we did like this disgusting food thing that was
we called it red, white, and ew.
Yeah, with colored red, white, and blue food stuff. And just like it was a fun and engaging thing. And if you walked in late, you know what you thought? Oh, like, why is everybody laughing? I missed something.
Exactly.
And so when it's not always the same, when it's not always predictable, people are much more likely to show up because they don't know what to expect. If they know what to expect, they can say, well, I don't really need to see this part. I'll come later.
Yeah. Yep.
So those are the 6 things.
Yes. And
let
me interrupt you. Because we have a 6.5.
Oh, we got a bonus.
We talked to, and this is going to totally break one of our rules. We said you have to start on time, but Dylan, we don't start on time at New City.
Brian, you've called us out.
We are big fat liars. So we start every service 1 minute late, no matter what. So our 9:30 service starts at 9:31. Our 11 starts at 11:01 without fail, and that's on purpose.
Right.
So the reason being, obviously, it gives people that 1 extra minute to get there, because a lot of people if they show up right on time, really they're late because they're grabbing coffee and things like that. So it gives them an extra minute to kind of get into the service.
And if they show up on time, they're still talking to friends. Most people don't show up and run right into the auditorium.
Yep. But I bet if you asked any of our people, none of them would know that we do this. And you know why?
Why is that, Brian?
Because our countdown timer, we start 5 minutes and 2 minutes before the service actually starts.
Yes.
So we don't start at 9:25, we start at 9:26. Ooh. So nobody's in there, even if they're a stickler for time and they get in there at 9:30. No one's sitting in there at 9:30 wondering, why haven't we started? Because they see, oh, we're starting in 1 minute.
They must assume that their iPhone clock is wrong because we're in the house of God. And of course, we can't be wrong.
Exactly. Nothing wrong happens here.
And with that, though, what's important is it is only 1 minute. It's not 3 minutes or 4 minutes or 5 minutes. It could literally be, their clock is like 60 seconds. It's not a big deal at all. But it's a really big deal for us because it allows people a whole extra minute to get there, which is, I think, part of the reason why at New City, I mean, we have latecomers like everybody does, but I feel like average wise, we've got a good amount of people that
Right.
start the service on time. Most of the people that come in late, it's because they're serving somewhere and they're coming when they're done. But yeah, that's the big thing for us is starting 1 minute late. In addition to having that countdown timer, ensures that most people are going to be there on time.
Yes.
So again, those are 6 and a half,
Six and a half.
bonus things that you can do to help people show up on time. Again, start on time, even when you're small, even if it feels awkward. You want to create that culture. Number 2, make the beginning of your service worth coming to. Number 3, put countdown timers on your screens. That'll probably make a bigger difference than you think. Number 4, don't guilt or point out people for being late. Number 5, make sure your kids check-in is seamless. And number 6, change up your order of service. And one bonus half reason tactic, start 60 seconds late, and it might help a few more people get there on time. So thanks for being with us today. As always, practicalplanting.com/questions. You can submit a question there if you want us to answer it, talk about it in a future episode. And until next time, we'll see you on Practical Church Planting. Thanks so much for watching this episode of Practical Church Planting. Whether you're watching on Facebook or YouTube or Practical Planting, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, make sure you like or subscribe or do whatever it's telling you to do or should do on that platform.
And hey, if you are so tired of looking at our ugly faces, but you're not tired of listening to our beautiful voices, then you can find our podcast if you just search Practical Church Planting on iTunes or Google Play. Make sure not to just find it, not just to listen, but to subscribe.
Make sure you subscribe. Brian, tell them to subscribe.
Subscribe.
See you next time.